Welcome to the Calm Nights, Strong Days podcast. With over 30 years in the health and wellness industry, I've realized there's no one-size-fits-all solution for sleep and stress resilience. What affects one person's sleep and ability to handle stress is different for each of us. The stage of life you're in, work and home stressors, and more all affect how your body handles stress and your quality of life. Join me as we explore a variety of tools, strategies, and solutions I've employed with clients over the years in solo episodes, as well as insightful interviews and experts. Together, we'll unravel more pieces of the puzzle, empowering you on your journey to calm nights and strong days. So let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the Calm Nights, Strong Days podcast. I am here today with a guest, Leah Pardee, who has the Bare Naked Soul podcast. I was actually interviewed by Leah on her podcast episode. And before I went on, I started listening to her episodes to get to learn her. And I realized how much she has gone through and life changes she's gone through and how she had to make changes and adapt when the stressors came on. And I thought that this would just be such a valuable, all the information and growth and learning that she's had would be so valuable for everybody listening today. So I'm so excited to have you with us today, Leah.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I loved our conversation on my podcast. So yeah, ready to dive back in with you.
Absolutely. No, this is exciting. So we'll start off with having the listeners understand where you were in your career. What was it, a year ago? Like what the last year and before that, what were you doing? What was your career like? What was life like for you?
Yeah, so years before that, I worked in corporate, and 5, 6 years ago, I started building a business I started with the blog. I started with like life coaching around confidence. I incorporated breath work and spirituality and was hosting retreats and doing workshops and all these various things throughout my business that I run. And it's been a wild ride. I mean, there's so many different directions with that has happened, but I've always felt very identified with my career. When I worked in corporate, I was the corporate girl, boss babe, and then when I left corporate and was running my business, that was such a big part of my identity, and having the podcast and which I still have the podcast, but showing up every day in that energy of and the purpose of having a business. As much as I kind of didn't realize it over the past 5 or so years, it really was a big part of my identity. And when I was in corporate, I didn't want kids. I got married at 25, no plans for kids. Woke up one day at 30 years old and said, I think I'm going to have a kid. This was just last year. But one of the biggest things that held me back was the idea that you have to take time off from your career, or if you don't, then you are a full-time working mom, you're doing daycare, you're picking your kid up from daycare, coming home, making dinner, and doing all the other things. It just seemed like there was no really good option for women. So why have kids? That was a big part of that for me. I just started feeling that pull for a baby and that baby fever and wanting to have a family. And I had her just this past September. She's 7 months old. And honestly, I should show you my business plan for this year, like my 2024 business plan. It's hilarious that I thought I was going to do all that with no childcare with a baby, like Superwoman. I'll just do it all. I'll just run my business full time with a baby. And it just didn't pan out that way. I also thought my baby would be easier to be babysat by other people, because I have my parents close by, and my in-laws, and even my husband. Even when he's watching her, she's difficult. She's a mama's girl. So she's been really, she doesn't want anyone else watching her. With my husband, she's pretty good, but so things just didn't pan out the way that I kind of thought that they would, Um, And it was really hard to having to look at that business plan and say, you know what, I'm not gonna do these things. I still published a book this year. I still have my podcast. I still do my email blog, but that's it. And that's like so minimal compared to all the things I, wanted to do, and hosting workshops and teaching this and that, and clients and all these things. So it was such a big lesson because um, it really showed me how much ego there was behind that business, how much I was trying to be fulfilled by that, and that was my identity and my purpose. So that was a big ego hit and a huge lesson to learn.
Yeah. So there is so much in everything that you said. I want to really dive into this. One thing I didn't know is that you were corporate first. So let's start at the beginning. I've written notes so that we can kind of go through all of these steps and really break them down. But why did you leave corporate? What was the...
Yeah. Well, I always felt a lack of purpose with what I was doing. I was working in sales, and I was really working for a company for a while where once I got to middle management, I realized a lot of the things we were talking about, we weren't actually doing. There's a lot of greenwashing happening. There's a lot of we do this and that for the environment. And then I find out my boss is going to court constantly for polluting the river and just paying the fees instead of actually stopping polluting the river. Right. So I just started to realize all these things were happening that were just, oh, that like hurt my soul to be working there. And I kept working there, was kind of in that golden handcuff situation, had gotten my MBA, was real determined to climb the ladder. And I stumbled upon the law of attraction is really what happened. I no longer actually really even believe in the law of attraction, to be honest. I think there's things to it that are possibly real. I stumbled into this is a whole different story, but yeah, I stumbled into this idea that you can just create anything out of thin air and, you know, and whatever. But I started to really change my life from that moment because I learned about things like journaling and meditation, and I started doing those two things every day. Just for a few minutes at a time, and it started to really change my life. And I discovered breath work, and I learned how to heal my nervous system because I was so stressed out in the corporate life. My shoulders were up so high. That feeling when you're tense and your shoulders are like so high up. And I didn't realize how much I was causing that myself, or that I didn't realize I had the power to release a lot of that stress and that pressure, you know? So once I started to find these tools that did help me with the stress in the corporate life, I wanted to teach those things. I wanted to, I've always been kind of a teacher type. I've always been someone who wants to share things. I was managing a sales team, so I was in a leadership role, and I've always kind of had that feeling. So I really just felt inspired to teach those things, you
Yeah.
know? So I started doing that. I started with the blog, and then I started with life coaching, and it was really because I wanted to have more of a purpose with what I was doing.
So, I mean, one thing you just said is you didn't have the power to release the pressure. You didn't feel you had the power to release the pressure. And I want everybody who is listening to this that is in corporate or is in some sort of a job or career where, or even life, like with family, with whatever situation that you are in at this moment, and there's so much pressure on you, and people are asking so much of you from all of these different avenues, that I want you to listen to what Leah did just say, is that she didn't believe, or she didn't feel that she had the power to release the pressure. And so I want people who are listening to this to understand that that is almost the start of when change can happen. So if anybody is feeling that at this moment, just know that you do have the power. It's finding those steps. And so if I'm understanding correct as well, you started journaling and breath work before you left. It wasn't like you discovered all of these tools after you left. Was it while you were in corporate that you started journaling, starting doing your own breath work?
Yeah. Yeah. I started every morning just meditating for like 2 minutes at a time. I started really small. And man, it was such a profound change just in the first month of doing that. I had challenged myself, I'm going to meditate every morning for 1 month.
Mhm.
And I started journaling a few minutes a day as well at the same time. And it's just my life started to change so much. I just felt like a joy from within that I had always felt joy from outer experiences, right? Something going my way. And I started to tap into this inner joy and this inner peace. And essentially what it was presence. I had no presence. I was 24/7 monkey mind, my mind just going crazy with different thoughts. And I had no idea what it was like to actually be in a state of the present moment.
Yeah.
So that just, I mean, it changed everything. And yeah, stress just started to like melt off of me.
Yeah. So this is so fascinating because I didn't know you had this corporate piece, but like what we're getting out of this is just want for everybody that's listening is to see that you felt like you didn't have like it within you to the power to release the pressure. And then you just started doing 2 minutes of breathing, 2 minutes meditation breathing, 2 minutes of journaling, you said 1 to 3 minutes of journaling for a month. That's it. So you were asking yourself to do 5 minutes of something that was not you being pulled in a direction, asked in a direction, having to do anything for someone else. So it was 5 minutes and 5 minutes a day for those 30 days. Within that time, you said you found joy within. And that's the big thing, because how many people that are listening to this don't feel that joy anymore because you're pulled in so many directions. There's so much stress on you. There's so many pressures on you. And so we're just saying 5 minutes. It really is 5 minutes in order to start to feel the joy, start to get some time for you. So you went through that at that 30 days, you started feeling joy. How long was your timeline between starting that breathing and journaling before you made the decision that was right for you to leave corporate?
So I started a blog right around the same time, maybe a little bit earlier, just talking about confidence, things that I was learning and teaching my sales team, mindset and confidence things. And then I started to incorporate the meditation and the things I was doing. And it was really sort of like I mean, kind of what I still do now through my podcast and my email blog. It's a lot of like a living testimony. It's like, you know, doing things and then sharing the experience. So I pretty quickly from there discovered life coaching and enrolled in that school for that. And it was probably about a year and a half later that I left corporate. So I spent that time, every night and so much time on the weekend building the business, making blog posts, and I started my podcast and working with clients in the evenings and amping up to leave corporate. So yeah, it was a hard decision, but I found so much clarity by being more present. I was able to start to notice my thoughts before I started doing all of the meditation. Thoughts just felt like reality. Like a thought would come into my mind, it just felt like, well, that's what's happening here. If it's a negative thought about someone, if it's a judgment about myself, if it's a fear or whatever, it just felt like reality. But when you get back to the seat of your soul and you start to just observe your thoughts, then you can notice that a lot of them aren't true, and you can choose whether or not to give them power over you. The thoughts that say this isn't going to work, the thoughts that say all the different things, you can kind of choose to ignore them.
Absolutely. And that's where, as well, where some people, after they learn what you're saying, they learn to start stopping, switching their nervous system out of that stress state, into a resting state, you start actually noticing what really is. Some people realize, oh, a lot of my reactions I have control of. Well, everybody realizes that, is that you actually have control of all of your reactions and how things affect you. And so there's different camps. One was for you, this was an environment where it went against your values, went against what was happening for you, and it really wasn't the right environment for you. And there's other people that realize, oh, once I have got more control over my thoughts when I'm in a stress state, when I'm not, they realize that the joy comes back in their career for them. So it's just fascinating how you can go through this. And as you start getting that nervous system back regulated, the way of your surroundings starts looking different, starts feeling different, what you have more power over, what you have more control over. The stressors affect you a lot less going on. And then that allows you to make the best decision for you, which for you was going this route, teaching everybody of what you learned. Something that you did say as well earlier was that at one point you did believe in the, oh shoot, what did you say? The
the law of attraction.
law of attraction.
Yeah.
And that is one thing in listening to your podcast as well that I loved about you. And there's a couple of podcasts that I listen to that I'm like, there's reasons that I love them. And one of the things is that they adapt and change, right?
Mm-hmm.
And their beliefs. So there's one podcast I do listen to where he always says, this is what I believe right now. So with the stage of life he's in, with the thoughts he's in, with the knowledge and everything that he has acquired to this stage in his life, this is what he believes now. And he literally just did another podcast episode how he's totally changed his mind on something. He had said, I will not do this. And now he's like, I'm kind of working towards this. I still have some things to learn, but I'm moving to that camp. And he explains why. And that's what I love. So with you as well, that's when I was listening to your podcast, I'm like, oh, I love this because you have allowed yourself to keep changing. You haven't stayed stuck in beliefs, stuck in thought patterns, stuck in ways that because you had maybe a strong opinion on something in one point in time, or a feeling or a thought, you've allowed, as you've adapted and changed, to also grow and adapt and change with your thoughts and feelings and beliefs. So that led you to starting your own business. And then that belief too of I'm not having kids to now I want kids. And then you were pregnant. So when you were pregnant, I don't know how your pregnancy was. I know pregnancy for me was exhausting and tough and stressful. And it was actually the pregnancy I didn't want to do again. After I had two, I'm like, that's it for pregnancies. I can't do 9 months of that, but that isn't for everybody. But how were you with your pregnancies while you were working, or with your pregnancy while you were working?
Yeah, I don't know. I loved pregnancy a lot of the time. And of course, a lot of the time it was extremely exhausting and, all the symptoms and all the pain. And I had a pretty scary bout of prenatal depression that hit me. And so it was a whirl, the first couple months I was like really sick. And then the second trimester, I was like, this is the best. I was so excited to have a baby. And every single day of pregnancy, though, I was putting out the intention of how I wanted to feel. And every single day I was meditating and doing breath work. Most days I did yoga, even if I could only do it for a few minutes. Those things, I mean, they helped so, 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 so much. But yeah, I mean, I had a healthy pregnancy. I couldn't be more grateful for that. But definitely, yeah, journaling through the hormonal thoughts that would come up and and breathing through the pain and then I did an unmedicated birth at a birthing center. I don't know if I'm just like so naive or what, but my algorithm at the time on Instagram was set to like gentle parenting and natural childbirth, right? So everything I would see all day long was confirming these things, which I'm a huge fan of gentle parenting. And I'm a huge fan of natural childbirth too. But what happens on Instagram is, of course, we all know a lot of it is fake. for lack of better words. A lot of it's a major exaggeration. A lot of it's just, it's a highlight reel, right? We all know that. So I'm like watching all these 2-second reels of these women just giving birth in a tub, no medication, the baby just comes right out, and the woman's not screaming or anything. And she, she just, so I spent hours in the tub pushing, wondering what is happening, because this is not what I saw on Instagram. Literally having those thoughts during birth. Um, but once again, breathing was a huge, huge help. I mean, without breath work, I couldn't have done it. I mean, I don't even know. It was still crazy. But yeah, that's kind of how it went.
Hmm. Yeah. And so with running your business throughout that time, were you still doing all of the things, like all of the tasks and full on 100% everything you were doing before you got pregnant in your business?
I mean, pretty close. I
Mhm.
probably took a little bit more time to relax, especially during the first trimester where I was really sick, with, morning sickness and all of that. I would say I did 85%,
Yeah.
maybe 90% of the same thing. I mean, I still had a weekly podcast episode. I still had clients I worked with on a weekly basis. I still did in-person events and yeah, hosted workshops. And that's really what I was doing for, you know, yeah, almost the whole time.
Yeah.
A couple weeks before I gave birth, I you know hit the brakes on the business and was like, okay, I'm going to take some time, and then was like, oh my gosh, now I'm just like anxiously waiting and bored waiting for this baby. But yeah, mostly I was still. I think it was really helpful to have that. Um, Otherwise, I just would have been, it's a nice distraction, I guess, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing. You rarely do hear of somebody while they're pregnant of slowing down on the things,
Mhm.
unless you like medically have to and really can't.
Yeah.
I know for me, like I couldn't walk, I couldn't have tons
Oh
of,
my gosh.
oh yeah, it was horrible. And I
Oh.
couldn't, we live off of a main street and I couldn't handle smells of
Mm.
any food and there's any meat. Or I would be nauseous. It was just like I struggled to really go out and move, which was really hard for me. So I worked because I could work in my
Mm.
office and I just worked, worked, worked. And it's just fascinating because we don't, but then we have this baby. And
Yeah.
we think, and I've had, uh, when I had my group program with responders, I had a holistic practitioner in with me, and she was like, "No, I'm just going to take a few weeks off and I'll be back." I'm like, "Let's see," and she ended up actually not coming back, um, which I think was a great decision for her. Hugely miss her, but it is fascinating how what we believe we are going to be able to do and what the reality of what we can do when these human beings need so much from us after pregnancy happened. So, how did that go for you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I expected to just go, I expected to. So I was initially going to take a couple months fully off from my business, and do a maternity leave, and a week or so, maybe 2 weeks in, I started doing more things, putting out podcasts here and there, and doing more writing and doing more. At the time I was really active on social media, and what I noticed was I took away my own maternity leave by choice. And I told myself I was just so enthusiastic about the things I wanted to share, which some of that was true. I made a podcast episode about my birth story. Great. But look, in retrospect, I was unable to give myself that time because I was so honestly addicted to the attention I was getting on social media. That's really what it was. Addicted to the attention. I mean, that's what these apps do, right? We talked about this when you were on my podcast, which was so awesome. Having that conversation, we talked about like screen time with kids and everything. But yeah, I mean, they want you to be addicted, and especially as a creator, I mean, there's more riding on it. So you have this dopamine hit when you're checking for likes and you're checking for engagement. And then you have this sense of like, well, this is my success, this is my career, this is my who I am. And so all of that, I mean, I was so validated by social media, you know. If I was having a bad day, I would share about it really candidly, with things with my daughter in the early days. I had a lot of I had a really bad postpartum depression. I'm not sure what happened first, but I had a really like extreme case of postpartum hives. So I had hives all over my body right after, and maybe a week after, and then depression maybe was because I couldn't sleep because I was so itchy. It was like insane. So then I had really bad depression alongside. I'm not sure which one came first, but um so and I was sharing about these things, and it was really nice because people were saying, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing this. Like thank you so much for being someone who's being honest about the experience and whatever." So there was some purpose involved. There was some a sense of helping people, a sense of that, which and that's great. But I also like see that it was also tied to my own ego and my own need for this validation and this attention. And yeah, it's kind of sad that I couldn't give myself even 2 months off with the option and the privilege of being able to do that. So I dove right back in, and a couple months in, um, was starting to get busier with work, and then was starting to just resent my time with my daughter because she was getting in the way of work, and trying to balance both was just proving to be really, really stressful. And I'm lucky, I have the option right now to work in a very minimal way. And so finally I said, you know what? Like, I was praying about it and asking for to be shown what was really going on. And what was really going on was a lot of ego, a lot of pride. And I was putting that before, I was putting work and success in front of my real values, which is being a mother, my family, that's more important. But sometimes it's hard to see that. So that I made the decision to just do my business in a really minimal way. I got off social media, and I'm just doing my business, a couple hours a week. And it feels so much better to really focus on motherhood in this way. And I'm also, like I said, very lucky to be able to do that. So yeah, big wake up call.
Yeah, it's so tough because we want these careers we love. I mean, I've never heard you once say you didn't love what you do. Like you love
Yeah.
your job, you love what you do, you love this business. And at the same time, we love our kids. We can still live in the and. We can love our business and we can love being a mom. The thing is that there's that balance at times. Like our life isn't the same when we solely had our careers and didn't have this mom role. And that's where I did have a friend of mine at one point when she had her kids, she said that she had to grieve her old life. And that didn't mean at all that she didn't love her old life, that she didn't love that career, that time before kids, all of that. But this new life with kids and a career is very different. And what that looks like from one person to another is also very different. I have friends who they could not be home full time with their kids. That's not their happy place. That's not what makes them happy. And they found solutions that worked better for their kids so that they could be doing their career. I know some too where the husband is the one that has stayed home and the woman has done the career, or vice versa. Some also financially, as you said too, do have to stay with those careers and work. The thing is that I think from all of this too is understanding that how things were has changed. It is not the same life we had before. And I think we have to really acknowledge that and stop and reassess and think, okay, what do we want this new life to be? So in corporate, in entrepreneur, when you're building a business, when you're in corporate and you're working on a project, at the start of every project, you really do set your goals, set your vision, build your plan, your whole plan of what you want it to be. And we don't really sit and do that when we have kids. We often stop and think, okay, we'll just keep doing the same thing and we'll just add a kid in there. Meanwhile, so many people just in corporate without kids are already burning out. So many entrepreneurs without kids are already burning out, that we do need to stop and almost do a whole new business plan, which sounds very non-emotional. But truthfully, stopping and redoing that business plan, and every stage of life too, you're a different person. So I know for you as well, like you don't coach the same things that you coached so you found journaling, breathing, meditation when you left corporate, and that became your business. But then after you have kids, those are still part of your foundational lives, but there's so much more added to you now, to your learnings and and what it is, that your business is different now as well. So how did you change your business? Like, you're working a few hours a week. What did you do? What did you let go of? What did you add in something different? What did you do?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So many things that you hit on. It's just so, and there's probably, I mean, I can't imagine there's a mom listening or a woman without kids who can't be like, yep, I feel that. Like, I feel that conflict. I feel like all of my friends are in this position. I have several friends who could stay home if they wanted to, but they don't want to. I have a friend who went to school for like, 8 years. She's a doctor. She wants to have her job.
And
A
that's
lot
okay.
of them, yeah, right. And but you know what I think most of them do agree on? I'm sorry I'm not answering your question right away. I feel like for so many of them though, it's like part-time, it either is the perfect option or sounds like the perfect option. Obviously, not all careers offer that, unfortunately. So what are you going to do? Like leave your career you've built up to go do something right? But that does seem like such a great, because then you're at work part-time, you miss your kids, you come home, you see them. There are days when I'm home with her where I'm like, this is the best thing ever. I've never wanted to do anything. I don't ever want to be away from her. And then there's a lot of days or hours or minutes or whatever where I'm like, oh man, to get up and go to a job, and then come home and spend time with her. But to not be sitting here reading the same kids book over and over and over every single day. It just feels like it's hard to find that perfect balance. But I yeah, so one thing that I added recently is photography. I had a strong interest in photography. Over the years, I had a lot of photo shoots for my own brand. Yeah, and then when I had Clara, like, I don't know, photos just took on a whole new meaning, the keepsake element of photos and all of that. So I started doing photography, and I also was kind of thinking this is a way for me to get out of the house, go meet with people, and do something in that creative realm that I can do part-time, flexible. So yeah, so I added that in recently, and that's been really nice, just doing a couple photo shoots a month. And I let go of a lot of things, and some of them will come back, like right now I'm just not doing any like breathwork workshops. I'm not doing like individual client work. I did a lot of like group programs. I hosted retreats. It's like those things will probably come back at some point. Certainly when my daughter's a little older, of course, I'll probably have more kids, but someday I definitely want to host retreats again. That was so, so fun. But that doesn't fit in with my dream plan of motherhood. I don't want to be away. And when I am away, I want to be, vacationing
Yes.
when I do spend nights away. So yeah, it's been like kind of mixing things up, but I do some in-person events now where I'm promoting my new book, so like vendor booths and things like that. I do have a workshop at a day retreat coming up at the end of summer, so I do some in-person things here in Pittsburgh still. But yeah, I feel so lucky to have something that can be flexible.
And definitely not everybody has that ability. that is something that would be great with businesses if they could adjust. I know one of our friends is a teacher and she went down to part-time and loves that. And that's, she can go back to full-time
Yeah.
when she's at a stage that she can. But the stage that her kids are at right now, being part-time, is really what works for her. And I wish that more jobs had those options of, okay, you could go. And so two women could possibly take on one role and share it for a number of years, you know, and then when another full-time role goes and they're both ready to move up to full-time, like you can do those options. Like that would be really nice to be able to have businesses as well that could really work outside the box, really start looking at these things too. So I guess I would maybe even encourage people that are listening to even see if their office would be open to something like that. Like there might be another mom that is home with their kids full time, but would love to do part time and could split a part time position with you. Um, and I'm sure that if that was offered in more companies, that it would just be, you know, so amazing what that would look like and how you'd plan it. I'm sitting here in my entrepreneur hat now, thinking about how you would really do that and split it and who does what and make sure it's fair. But you can split a role into two,
Mhm.
right? There's so many ways to do that. So I guess I would encourage people too that feel that they are stuck in a box to start thinking out of the box. That's where you were talking about journaling too. And this is what's fascinating about journaling is you can journal every day and ask the same question. And you can say, how can I think outside the box or decrease the hours in my position? Like, what are the out of box ways to do this? And you journal for a month on this, and you'll start coming up with so many ideas that eventually some of them might be ideas that your business might be open to doing. Like it really does need for us to start getting out of the box, out of the status quo, out of like how things have always been done, and think, how could we do this in order to make it work for you? So this is where as well you said that you didn't feel you had the power to release the pressure. And if we go back to that in what you said, we can now bring that into to how what your career looks like now. If your boss maybe, or if you are the boss, why can't you have two female bosses? You know, part-time bosses, same position. And if you have them with full bandwidth, man, what they could do could take
Mhm.
places. So it doesn't hurt to start asking and start brainstorming and figuring out ways to start taking that pressure off because you do have the power to do so. You
Yeah.
absolutely have that power to take the pressure off in finding certain ways to do that, finding creative ways so you can still have your career if you want or need that career. If you want or need to be home more with your kids or less with your kids, you have that power to really start thinking out of the box and creating ways to make it happen. Just because things have been done forever one way doesn't mean that's how we have to continue doing it.
Yeah, I love that. I just feel like this is a spark where you just never know. Somebody mentions that to their boss, and maybe it's not possible right now, but maybe that spark is like a little seed planted. And then a meeting happens in the future where they're having an organization meeting and they have this conversation, because so many women left the workforce and because of the pandemic. Kids were home one day and then off the next day, and a lot of people decided to leave the workforce. We have to make a shift. I feel like it's really important to plant these seeds, and for people listening who maybe do run organizations or are in a managerial position where they can have that level of influence and power, like something does have to change. Because okay, so this is how I feel. I feel like we obviously there was a need for the feminist movement to get women into leadership roles, right? Like that was needed. And the boss babe movement came along. I was like really into that. Like books like what was that Sheryl Sandberg book? Oh, lean in. It was like lean in. Like kind of that era of books that were all about like climbing the ladder as a woman. And that's
Yes.
great. Like that's why there are women in leadership roles making changes. And then I feel like the pendulum swung so far in that direction that maybe we sort of, at least for me, developed this mindset of like, okay, I'm gonna go all in on having this big career, and then you become at an age where, or a point in your life where you want something else like kids, and it's like, wait a minute, now I'm in this extreme golden handcuff situation. I think a big problem for a lot of people is waiting longer to have kids. Now you're so used to two incomes and that lifestyle. And this is not for everybody. I know there's a lot of people who absolutely can't live on one income. And there's a lot of people who absolutely could, but it would take a lifestyle shift. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It would take not having car payments and driving new cars. It would take changes to lifestyle and the way that we spend money. And it's hard to do that. It's hard to readjust the way that you're living in order to make one income work, or one and a half incomes, if you can find a part-time or create a part-time situation. I feel like we got ourselves into a trap of these huge houses and these huge car payments and all these things. And now it's like, well, what do I do from here? I have all this debt and all these things. Um, so I do think there's a sweet spot out there where women can have careers, but maybe, I don't know. Do you feel this at all?
Yes, I do. And I also have some other thoughts on that as well, though. So I do feel it in the sense of like, we have been born to believe that we need all of these things to achieve, right? It used to be like what's it, 2.2 kids, house, white picket fence used to be the old thing. But now it's like, that's even, it's expanded.
It's a bigger
It,
house with a
right.
bigger
It's a bigger
picket
house.
fence.
It's more expensive cars. It's all of those things, right? That's advanced as society has advanced. So kind of have that, like here where I live as well, like people also have cottages where they're like $1 million cottages, and it's just, so then you have two properties to be upkeeping, and so with all of these assets also comes more responsibility and time as well. And it does take that shift to stop and say, okay, is this what I want? And it might be, but if you have that cottage, but you can never go to the cottage, then is it worth it? Right? What needs to shift? What needs to change? And what needs to shift and change for one person is always going to be different than what it is for the other person, because we all have different things that we really want or that are priorities or mean a lot to us. So there's that aspect of that. But then the other thing as well is with this, women going into careers in leadership, they're all going into this old system, into this old thing that was meant for a system where there was always one person at the house doing all the house things, and the other person that was going up in leadership could work all the hours they wanted to work, travel all they needed to work, because there was always somebody at home taking care of the kids in the house. And so that aspect, so we've gone into, we're kind of fitting this, we're trying to fit into an old model into a new lifestyle. And so that needs to shift, where, as I'm saying, as they're moving up in leadership, does it have to be full-time hours? For either the male or the female, like males are also burning out. Males are not finding the joy in things. It's everybody, like, because these hours and the time. And as women, we get so much joy and connection from being at home, but these men as well, when they're working so much, then they come home and they're almost like, I don't fit in here. So if it was something as well where we could start switching, where it wasn't, and I'm thinking so out of the box, like it doesn't have to be one set in stone. It could be where maybe 1 month somebody works a position full time, and the next month they're part time. If there's like a 1.5 positions of something, because people are so overworked right now, they really are working 1.5 positions. But maybe somebody did 40 hours one week, and the next week they did 20, next week 40, and somebody else alternated. And they both, like, it was like two people doing a job. Like, we need to really start thinking out of the box. We need to really start thinking, okay, we have had this work system of you do 40 hours a work week, but now it's even more than that. It's the travel. Like, that 40-hour work week was before devices came in and you were working outside when you're at home, when you're working weekends, when you're working holidays. It was before travel was as much of a thing, or working in totally different time zones. Like, we have adapted so much, and corporations have expanded so much now, but the framework that they are placed in has not. So I feel that as everybody is moving up, and as all of our lives are changing, and all of our stages of life do happen, that we need to create a different way that the workforce is actually functioning. And we need to really, really think outside the box on that one in order to make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I so agree. It's an old paradigm. Yeah, when I was working in corporate, I was I was like often the only woman on the leadership team, you know. Yeah, I would go on these business trips all the time, and there would be just a couple of us girls, and a lot of usually the other women had kids. They were usually older than I was at the time. I was only like 26. And I just remember like so many times when one of the girls would be like crying because she missed her kids, and you know, she's on the other side of the country and different time zone from them. And it's just, yeah, that made me not want kids.
Right?
Instead of thinking, what else, you know, how could I do, you know, and which eventually led me, yeah, I think that was a big part of wanting my own business too, was just to have more freedom and flexibility. But that's not the answer for everyone, obviously.
No, and that's the thing, is I think that so many people do go towards entrepreneurship because they don't like that old model
Mm-hmm.
of corporate, but there's certain people like that actually would love to do a lot of corporate jobs, corporate careers, but not working in that old model. That, as you said, that's already one person that I'm sure would have loved to have been part-time with another parent,
Mm-hmm.
male or female, right? But another parent that could maybe have done part-time with them during that stage of their life or their career until their kids were a little older, and then they could change those hours, right? Like, it's one of those things. Why does one person have to do one job 40 hours?
Yeah.
You can switch that and adapt it and change it. Financially, not everybody can do that, but you know, we really do need to start really thinking outside of the box in order to be able to make it work for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, amazing. So I know we could go on, I think, forever on this.
Yeah.
This is something that's so passionate for me, and this is why I wanted to have you, is to show, and I didn't even know your corporate piece, so that's exciting, but just to show people that it's okay to adapt and change as different stages of life adapt and change for you. You will be okay, but you really do need to think outside the box. So before we go, well, I know I'm going to put your website, your podcast. I will post that. Everybody can find your social from your website and everything. So I will put those in the show notes, so everybody can find you. Before we go, is there anything that you feel the audience needs to hear, needs to know?
Oh man. Yeah, I just feel like start journaling, start writing some things down. I have some guided journals on Amazon if you want more guidance there, but just grab a note. You know, sometimes I think the intimidation is grabbing a blank sheet of paper. Just do it. Grab a blank sheet of paper. Start asking yourself, what are my values? You know, what are the most important things to me? And just see what comes up, and then ask yourself, you know, where am I not living in alignment with those values? What's off here? Because it's so hard with our ego, you know, to see past that, to see the choices that we are making that are not in alignment. You know, these choices that are so wrapped up in success and validation and pride, and that clouds our vision so much. And I think journaling is a really powerful way to move past that and to really like look at it face to face on a piece of paper and say, you know what? Yeah, I'm not really living the life I want, and I have more power than I think I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think from everything that you've said today, I'm going to be quoting this because what you said was amazing, is that you didn't think you have the power to release the pressure. So we're going to change that to you have the power to release the pressure and start journaling it. Exactly as Leah just said, like start journaling it. And I know when I heard of journaling before, I'm like, that's so woohoo, whatever. But really, it's just a sentence. Like, what do I like? How can I gain more power to release the pressure? Or what can I do to release the pressure on myself? And start vomiting anything that comes out, the most crazy, ridiculous things, or just, I don't even know. You can even just write, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And all of a sudden things will pop in your head.
They will. Yeah. And it's like it's therapy. It's releasing all the mess, all the junk in your head. It's just releasing it.
It is, absolutely. All right. Thank you, Leah. I will post a link of the episode that I did with Leah, and we will see you in the next episode. Wait, before you go, if you found this podcast valuable, please consider liking and subscribing. Your support helps others discover these insights too. And if you're ready to transform your sleep and stress management and would like to see if we are a good fit with one another, let's chat. The link to my calendar is in the show notes below. Let's connect and start your journey to calm nights and strong days now. Until next time, sleep peacefully and stay resilient.